Unit 6, the major scale. Major scales, notation and spelling. Scales. Scales are a basic building block for writing melodies. The term scale comes from the Latin word for a ladder. A scale can be defined as a pattern of notes that moves in steps. The major scale. The major scale, the most common type of scale in music, is often described as having a cheerful sound. Major scales have 8 notes. The notes on the staff step from line to space and space to line, and here we could see line, space, line, space, line, space, line, space. Make sure to include all the letter names of the musical alphabet when you write the scale. The first note should be the same letter name as the last note. Here you can see the notes of a C major scale both on a keyboard and on a treble clef staff. So we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, which sounds like this. The major tetrachord. Before we write a full major scale, we'll begin with a partial scale called a tetrachord. Tetra is the Greek word for 4. A tetrachord is a group of 4 notes. A major tetrachord uses a pattern of whole steps and half steps. Whole, whole, half, which looks like this. Whole, whole, half. F major tetrachord. We can build a major tetrachord on any note. Simply write 4 notes ascending by step and follow the pattern of whole steps and half steps. However, we may have to add 1 or more flats to make the pattern fit. If we begin on F and follow the whole, whole, half pattern, we must write a B flat. So starting on F, we have whole, whole, half, and you can see that B flat. And that major tetrachord sounds like this. The D major tetrachord. We may also have to add 1 or more sharps to make the pattern fit. If we begin on D and follow the whole, whole, half pattern, we must write an F sharp. So starting on D, we have whole, whole, half. And you can see we have that F sharp there. So that D major tetrachord sounds like this. C major scale. We can create a full 8-note major scale by combining 2 major tetrachords. These tetrachords are separated by a whole step. Therefore, the pattern to write a full major scale is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So our first tetrachord starting on C, whole, whole, half. A whole step of separation, and then our tetrachord on G, whole, whole, half. The C major scale can be seen as a combination of the tetrachord that begins on C plus the tetrachord that begins on G. The C major scale has no sharps or flats. It only uses the white keys of the piano. G major scale. To write a G major scale, we must begin on G. Scales get their name from the starting note. We can combine the tetrachord that begins on G with the tetrachord that begins on D? Recall from earlier that the D tetrachord required an F sharp to make the whole half pattern fit. And now we can see that as we go through the whole steps and half steps. So starting on G, our G tetrachord is whole, half. Then a whole step of separation, and now the D tetrachord is whole, half. Therefore, a G major scale has an F sharp. Now let's listen to the scale. The F major scale. To write an F major scale, we must begin on F. We can combine the tetrachord that begins on F with the tetrachord that begins on C. Recall from earlier that the F tetrachord required a B flat to make the whole half pattern fit. And now let's go through that F tetrachord, whole, half. The whole step of separation, and now the C tetrachord, whole, half. Therefore, an F major scale has a B flat. Writing major scales. You can write a major scale starting on just about any note. To write an unfamiliar scale, follow these steps. Begin by writing the 8 notes on the staff. The notes should move by step from line to space. Use all of the letter names and end on the same letter name that you have started with. Add any sharps or flats that are needed to make the notes fit the whole half pattern. Note, you should never mix sharps and flats in the same major scale. Scale spelling. 1. Spelling a scale with the correct sharps or flats is important. This D major scale will sound correct when played, but it is spelled incorrectly. It is important when writing a scale that you are able to see the steps of the scale on the staff. You can see here that there are 3 space notes in a row. So if we go through those steps, we can see line, space, space, space. So there's our 3 spaces in a row. Line, space, line, space. This scale also mixes sharps and flats. It does not use all of the letter name. There is no F, so we go D, E, G flat, G. So we're missing the F there. Scale spelling 2. Here is the D major scale, which sounds exactly the same, but now it's written with the correct spelling. The notes are written so that they move in step. There is a note on every line and space between the 2 Ds. No lines or spaces are reused. So we have line, space, line, space, line, space, line, space. All of the letter names are also used. Scale spelling 3. When a scale begins with a flat note, the scale will end with that same flat note. It will not use any sharps. When a scale begins with a sharp note, the scale will end with that same sharp note. It will not use any flats. Here's a B flat major scale, which begins and ends on B flat. Why do we need to study scales? Major scales are one of the building blocks of melodies. Most melodies are based on the notes of a scale. Joy to the World is based on a descending major scale. Here, the melody descends through the notes of a D major scale, moving by step from the highest to the lowest note of the scale. This melody from the second suite in F by Holst is based on an F major scale. The melody begins by ascending through the notes of the scale. However, most melodies are composed by rearranging the notes of a scale into a completely new order. This is what makes each melody sound different from one another. The melody from this minuet in G is based on a G major scale, but the notes don't simply ascend or descend, they form a completely unique pattern. Exercises. Practice writing tetrachords on a note following the whole, whole, half pattern. Use a piano to calculate half steps and whole steps. If you don't have a keyboard, there are many virtual pianos available for smartphone and online. Practice writing full major scales using the whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half pattern. Be sure to follow the steps outlined in this lesson. Be careful with spelling. Just because something sounds right doesn't mean you've used the right sharps or flats. Major scale concepts. Scale degree numbers. The individual notes in a major scale are assigned a scale degree number. A small caret should be placed above the number. There are 7 scale degrees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1 again. The scale degree number is assigned to a position in the scale, not a specific slot on the staff. So the scale degree will be the same for notes that are written in a different clef or octave. Here's the same C major scale written 1 octave lower in the bass clef. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1 again. In any major scale, the starting note is the first scale degree. Here are the scale degree numbers for F major. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1 again. Solfege. In singing, it is common to use a syllable to sing each scale degree. This method of singing is called solfege or solfeggio. Here's a C major scale with the solfege syllables written below each note. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Functional scale names. In addition to a scale degree number and a solfege syllable, each step of the scale is given a formal name. Scale degree 1 is the tonic. Scale degree 2 is the supertonic. Scale degree 3 is the mediant. Scale degree 4 is the subdominant. Scale degree 5 is the dominant. Scale degree 6 is the submediant. Scale degree 7 is the leading tone. And here we have the tonic again. The tonic, subdominant, dominant, and leading tone are important building blocks in melody and harmony. The tonic is the first scale degree and the home note in any scale. Melodies tend to start and end on the tonic. The dominant is 5 notes above the tonic. The subdominant is 5 notes below the tonic. The leading tone is a half step below the tonic. This half step creates a tendency, a pull from the leading tone to the tonic. Leading tone resolution. A very common way to end a tune is to step from leading tone to tonic, providing a satisfactory resolution. Here are the last 4 measures of the minuet in G, which is written using the G major scale. In the final 2 notes, the leading tone, F sharp, resolves to the tonic, G. And that's based on this G major scale. Leading tone tonic, which occurs 1 octave lower in the example.